Currently, Iranian crude oil is overflowing, but because of this, it's actually coming back as a ticking time bomb. The impact of the US's counter-blockade pressure is having a tremendous effect on Iran. Let's take a closer look at this issue today. Let's get right into it. The Wall Street Journal reports that after US counter-blockade pressure on Iran, all Iranian crude oil imports and exports have stopped. As a result, Iran's oil storage tanks are currently full. The problem is that this is actually turning out to be harmful for Iran. Let me explain why. If Iran lacks crude oil storage, it will need to reduce production. Still, Iran is working to avoid cutting its oil output. Oil production can't just be stopped instantly like factory work. Oil fields require continuous extraction to maintain pressure. Stopping suddenly causes internal pressure to collapse. When this occurs, water or impurities may enter, damaging the oil field. Even if production restarts, extraction is reduced, and in the worst case, the field must be permanently closed. That's why they're extremely cautious even when reducing production. But right now, since Iran can't export its oil, the oil storage facilities in Iran are continuously filling up. Because of this, Iran can't stop oil production, nor can it export, so it's facing a very serious crisis. Officials say that Iran is even using abandoned, deteriorated storage tanks in southern oil production and logistics hubs like Ahvaz and Asaluya to store oil. Additionally, reports indicate Iran is attempting to transport oil to China by rail. Transporting oil by rail is usually not done because it's less profitable and less efficient, but since the oil is piling up in Iran, they're even resorting to using railways. Shipping analysis firms like Vortexa and Capillaire predicted that Iran's oil storage tanks would reach their capacity limits within 1 or 2 weeks, but it seems they've hit that limit sooner than expected. President Trump said storage capacity would reach its limit within 3 days, or 2 days from this video's upload, but it's unclear if that's true. Anyway, it seems clear that the limit will be reached soon. Richard Bronze, the head of Energy Aspects, a UK energy market analysis company, said that the intention behind the maritime blockade is to neutralize Iran's leverage over the Strait of Hormuz and to increase economic pressure to bring Iran to the negotiating table. Because Iran has faced global economic sanctions for over 40 years, it is known for its resilience to economic pressure. We'll have to wait and see how Iran responds. For now, it is true that Iran is facing a major crisis. Of course, Iran may be able to hold out a little longer. This is because, for one, they could deploy oil tankers at the port to use them as temporary storage, and they also have the option to slightly reduce oil production for the remainder of this month. Unless the United States lifts the counter-blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, this remains a short-term fix. The US currently appears intent on collapsing Iran's oil industry. In fact, most of Iran's national income comes from crude oil, so if the oil industry itself collapses, Iran will lose the power to recover in the future. As a result, Iran now shows a different stance. Despite the second round of US-Iran talks failing, Iran is now actively pursuing regional diplomacy and preparing for an agreement behind the scenes. For example, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has visited Pakistan, Oman, and Russia, closely communicating with neighboring countries about regional issues. Iran has also shown signs of stepping back. According to the American political media Axios, Iran has reportedly delivered a new proposal to the United States, suggesting that they set aside the nuclear issue for now and resolve the most urgent matters first. This approach suggests not putting the most sensitive card, the nuclear negotiations, on the table right away, but instead first resolving the Hormuz issue and the state of war. The plan proposed by Iran will proceed in stages. First, Iran would end control of the strait as the United States lifts its maritime counter-blockade. Afterward, they would pursue a long-term ceasefire or peace agreement to reduce tensions. Once things stabilize, the plan is to restart nuclear talks. The main strategy is to make negotiations easier. The nuclear issue is a major point of conflict between hardliners and moderates in Iran, so raising it immediately could likely derail the negotiations. Iran raised issues more likely to reach agreement first, creating a diplomatic exit and minimizing internal backlash, while also signaling the United States. Because lifting the maritime blockade is essential for the economy to breathe, Iran is putting its most urgent issue at the forefront to bring the other side to the negotiating table. Axios is evaluating this proposal as a detour strategy that could break the deadlock. The intention is to shift the focus of the negotiations from nuclear issues to maritime control, creating room for mutual concessions. However, for the United States, accepting this proposal is difficult. The maritime blockade is its strongest pressure tool on Iran, so lifting it first would weaken leverage in future nuclear talks. On top of that, President Trump continues to signal that he will maintain the counter-blockade, so it is still uncertain whether this proposal will actually lead to the resumption of negotiations or result in yet another deadlock. Additionally, Iran's internal situation is getting more complicated. Currently, hardliners hold power and view the nuclear program as vital to the regime, so they refuse to discuss it in negotiations. In particular, there is a strong perception that the nuclear program are not just a military technology, but a symbol directly tied to the survival of the regime, so the moment they make any concessions on this, the legitimacy of the government itself could be shaken. Amid this atmosphere, conflict with negotiators favoring a more flexible diplomatic approach is intensifying. In fact, one of the reasons Iran has not been able to present a consistent position during the negotiations is precisely because of these internal divisions. In diplomatic circles, there is an attitude that a certain level of compromise is necessary to ease tensions and lift sanctions, but hardline forces such as the military and the Revolutionary Guard maintain the stance that they must resist pressure until the end. Policy decisions are now slower, and messages sometimes shift with the situation. These internal conflicts could weaken their negotiating power, but on the other hand, they could also serve as pressure to maintain a hardline stance. However, time is not on their side. The longer this continues, Iran's internal situation worsens faster. High inflation was already rising before the war, but with the war, prices are increasing even more quickly. The International Monetary Fund has projected Iran's inflation rate this year to be around 70%, which is the highest figure since 1980. This number shows that prices are soaring every month all year. Iran's monthly minimum wage is known to be about 150,000 won, and with this amount, you can only buy around 20 small chickens at the market. With daily necessities becoming more expensive, people are reaching their limits. Due to sharp increases in prices for staples like cooking oil, rice, and meat, many households now eat less or choose lower quality meals. As a result, in areas bordering Iran, there are clear signs of people taking action for survival. Many people are traveling overland to neighboring countries to buy relatively cheap goods and then bring them back to resell as a way to make a living. So-called cross-border petty traders are rapidly increasing. Some residents cross the border several times a day, carrying cooking oil and daily necessities, and this process itself has become a means of survival. This phenomenon can be seen as a strong signal that the national economy is not functioning properly. And Tasnim news agency estimated that the damage to Iran from the attacks by the United States and Israel is about 400 trillion won. Iran announced that the damage is about 400 trillion won. Because of this, the prevailing assessment is that the damage is at least over 400 trillion won. Israel and the United States have struck government facilities, military facilities, and factories inside Iran, so Iran has suffered devastating damage. However, Iran seems to have decided to hold its ground completely. They found it hard to quickly relieve external pressure, so their plan is to absorb the shock internally and gain time. Iran's leadership views the situation as a long-term battle and believes they can withstand the war's economic shock longer than the United States, according to a CNN report. Iran has already been under sanctions for decades. By repeatedly experiencing pressures such as financial sanctions, restrictions on oil exports, and trade blockades, they have built up a certain level of resistance to sanctions. They've also learned to handle crises using rationing systems and a controlled economy. Given this background, there is confidence that even a short-term economic setback won't immediately destabilize the regime, and political calculations are part of it too. In the United States, rising prices and oil costs quickly impact public sentiment. On the other hand, Iran, due to the nature of its authoritarian system, has the ability to strongly suppress economic discontent through its control. Iran believes that prolonging the situation increases political pressure in the United States. If international oil prices rise, it directly impacts US consumer prices, so Iran uses this as leverage. So Iran's strategy is clear right now. Rather than making hasty concessions in negotiations, they plan to hold out, wear the other side down, shock oil prices and the global market, and thereby raise their bargaining power. However, this judgment carries significant risk. With the internal economy nearing its limit, prolonged resistance increases the chance the regime's stability will be threatened. Can Iran truly endure